So that also includes Kshetrajna, also the perspective of who is Kshetrajna and all the details. So based on teachings of Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 13, verses number 8 to 18 will be covering all these verses. All of you can recite after me with the prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So these are around continuous 5 verses. Each verse will recite. All of you can repeat after me. Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa kshantirarjavam acharyopasanam sauchyam Stairyam Atma Vinigraha. Once again, Amanitvam Adambitvam Ahimsa Kshantir Arjavam Acharyopasanam Sauchyam Stairyam Atma Vinigraha. Indriyardeshu Vairagyam Anahankara Evacha Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam Indriyardeshu Vairagyam Anahankara Evacha Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam Asaktir Anabhiswangaha Putra Dara Grahadishu Nityam Cha Samachittatvam Isthanishtopapatishu. Once again, Asaktir Anabhiswangaha Putra Dara Grahadishu Nityam Cha Samachittatvam Isthanishtopapatishu Mai Chananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini Vivikta Desha Sevitvam Aratirjana Samsadi Maicha Ananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini Vivikta Desha Sevitvam Aratirjana Samsadi Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam Etat Jnanam Iti Proktam
Etadjnanam iti proktam
Ajnanam yat yato anyada.
Adjnanam yad ato anyatha
Adhyatma jnana nityatvam.
Adhyatma jnana nityatvam
Tattva jnanartha darshanam.
Tattva jnanartha darshanam
Etat jnanam iti proktam.
Etadjnana iti proktam
Ajnanam yat ato anyada.
Adjnanam yo yatha.
So all these 5 verses are complete 20 items of knowledge. The translation is for as follows: humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, and self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, non-attachment to children, wife, home, and the rest, and even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, resorting to solitary places, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I thus declare to be knowledge, and what is contrary to this is ignorance. So Krishna is saying all these 20 items are considered as knowledge. Anything other than this is considered as ignorance. Ajnanam yat yato anyata. That last line says. So what is the misunderstanding about this process of knowledge? So this process is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent man as being interaction of the field of activity. So if one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of the tenfold elements as described before, but is actually the means to get out of it. So what is the most important quality? The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotion service to the Lord. If one does not or not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value. But if one takes to devotion service in full Krishna consciousness, other 19 items automatically develop within oneself. So the main is Maicha Ananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini. That unalloyed pure devotion service is the main perspective out of 20 items of knowledge. So what is the most essential quality? The principle of accepting a spiritual master is essential. Even one who takes devotion service, it is important. So transcendental life begins when one accepts the bona fide spiritual master. This is there in the first verse. Acharyo Pasanam. So that is the basis for coming to the stage of pure devotion. Then what is ignorance? Ajnana. Lord Krishna clearly states this process of knowledge is the actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is ignorance, nonsense. So what is the significance of these various items of knowledge? So beginning from practicing humility up to the point of realization of the supreme truth, this process is like a staircase beginning from ground floor to the top floor. So unless one reaches the last floor, one is at a lower stage of knowledge only. So why should we discuss the miseries of material life here? So unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the distresses of birth, death, old age, and disease, there is no impetus for our making advancement in spiritual life. So why should be the Jiva's position? What should be the Jiva's position after understanding this knowledge? So if anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he will be frustrated. So it is clearly stated, without humility, understanding is harmful. And to think oneself God is most puffed up situation. So one must be humble and know that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. So due to the rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material nature. So one must know and be convinced of this truth. So Prabhupada has elaborated about each element. We understand the essence of that. For more details, you can read the purport there. It's almost like 4 or 5 pages purport. So humility is not to be anxious to have satisfaction of being honored by others. So pridelessness means not to be anxious to be famous for one's religion and entering into a group, not actually following principles and wanting to advertise as a religious mentor. So non-violence means not to put others into distress So unless one elevates one to spiritual knowledge, one is practicing violence. So try our best to distribute this real knowledge. So tolerance means be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. Like example, Prahlad Maharaj. So simplicity is so straightforward that you can disclose the real truth even to an enemy and without duplicity. Bona fide spiritual master, with all humility and offer all services. If he bestows blessings, that will make it easier to follow all the regulative principles and one immediately advance. Then cleanliness, external and internal. For external, bathing is external. And chanting the holy name of the Lord is for internal cleanliness. So steadiness means one should be determined to progress in spiritual life. So self-control is reject anything unfavorable for spiritual advancement. So renunciations of the objects of sense gratification is not cater to unnecessary demands. So cater to only things that can keep this body fit for devotional service. Then how can one control? Engage by systematic regulation, especially chanting Hare Krishna and eating prasadam only. So in the absence of false ego, reject that I am this body, mind, and accept I am a servant of Krishna. Then there is perception of evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. One must regularly hear about these topics from the proper source. So detachment means be ready to sacrifice everything for Krishna. So non-attachment to children, wife, home, and the rest. Affection is natural. Renounce if not favorable for spiritual advancement. Arjuna is asked to renounce family connections similarly. So even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, not elated or distressed at material loss or gain. This is possible by performing unbreakable devotion service. Then constant and unalloyed devotion to Lord by engaging in 9 processes of bhakti, Navaveda bhakti. Resorting to solitary places, not desiring to mix with materialistic men and living in the association of devotees. So detachment from general mass of people is itself the point. Then accepting the importance of self-realization, give up unnecessary sporting, cinema going, social activities and such wastage of time. And philosophical search for the absolute truth is rejection of useless research of philosophical topics and research into the nature of soul by philosophical discussion. So these are the perspectives of the 20 items of knowledge. 1 second, I'll just come. There is some audio disturbance. Okay, next, now Krishna talks about the object of knowledge, Jnayam, from this verse. And he also explains about the difference between the soul and the super soul, because both of them are kshetrajna. To understand the limit of each is explained in the further verses. All of you can recite after me. Jnayam yattat pravakshami. Yajñatva amrutam asnute.
Yajñatmāmrutam-asnute.
Anadimat param brahma.
Anadimat param brahma.
Nasattanna saduchyate.
Nasattanna saduchyate.
Jnayam yattat pravakshami.
Jnayam yattat pravakshami.
Yajñatva amrutam asnute.
Yajñatmāmrutam-asnute.
Anadimat param brahma.
Anadimat param brahma.
Nasattanna saduchyate.
Nasattanna saduchyate.
So Krishna says, Jnayam yattat pravakshami. Now I am going to explain about Jnaya. Yajñatva amrutam asnute. One becomes liberated by understanding this knowledge. Anadimat param brahma. And it is without beginning. And you should understand that is the supreme perspective. Nasattat nasaduchyate. And there is nothing lies beyond this cause and effect of this material. So I shall now explain the knowable, Jnayam yattat pravakshami, knowing which you will taste the eternal, Yajñatva amrutam asnute. And this is beginningless, Anadimat, and it is subordinate to me. Anadimat, Anadi, Mat Param Brahma, it is called Brahman, the spirit, and it lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. That is nasan tan nasaduchyate. So what is the benefit of knowing the knowable? So Lord is explaining knowable, that is both the soul and the super soul respectively. So by the knowledge of the knower, both the soul and the super soul, one can relish the nectar of life. So living entity as the knowable, he is eternal, yes. No specific date at which the Jiva was born, nor can anyone trace out the history of Jivatma's manifestation from the Supreme Lord. That's why he is called as beginningless. So quoting from Kata Upanishad, Na jayate mruyate va upaschit. The knower of the body is never born and never dies, and he is full of knowledge by nature. Then there is Supreme Lord as Super Soul. Quoting from again Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Pradhana Kshetrajna Pati Guneshah. The Supreme Lord as a Super Soul is the chief knower of the body, and he is the master of the three modes of material nature. Then reference one more from Padma Purana, Dasa Bhuto Hare Reva Nanya Seva Kadashana. The living entities are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. Dasa Bhutaha Hare Reva. So this Bhutaha, living entities are Hare Dasaha. The are servants of the Supreme Lord. So is this verse referring to individual soul or super soul? So the description of Brahman mentioned in this verse is in relation to the individual soul. So when the word Brahman applied to living entity, it is said to be understood as Vijnana Brahma, as opposed to Ananda Brahma or Ananta Brahma, that is the Supreme Lord. So next from here, the Supreme Lord as Super Soul and his qualities are enumerated. All of you can recite after me. Sarvatah Pani Padam Tad.
Sarvatah Pani Padam Tad.
Sarvatokshi Kshiro Mukam.
Sarvatoshi Shiromukam.
Sarvatah Shrutiman Loke.
Sarvatah Shriman Loke.
Sarvam Avritya Tishtati.
Sarvam Avritya Tishtati.
Sarvatah Pani Padam Tad.
Sarvatah Pani Padam Tad.
Sarvatokshi Shiromukam.
Sarvatoshi Shiromukam.
Sarvatah Shrutiman Loke.
Sarvatah Shriman Loke.
Sarvam Avritya Tishtati.
Sarvam Avritya Tishtati.
So Sarvatah Pani Padam Tat. Everywhere are his hands and lotus feet. Sarvatah Akshi Shiromukam. Everywhere are his face, eyes and head. Sarvatah Shrutiman Loke. Everywhere he hears everything. And Sarvam Avritya Tishtati. And he is spread over everywhere. So that is where it is mentioned. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes and faces. He hears everything. In this way, the Super Soul exists. So people may question, how is Super Soul all pervading? As the sun exists, diffusing its unlimited rays, so does the Super Soul. So all living entities to Brahma till an ant exist in him only. So all are existing in and on the Super Soul. Because of presence of Paramatma everywhere, we are able to exist. Then people may ask, is the individual soul all pervading? Because individual soul cannot say all his hands and legs are everywhere. But only under ignorance or illusion does he think that I am spread everywhere like Lord. Like Supreme Lord can extend his hand without limit, but the individual soul cannot. Like Goloka eva nivasati akilatma bhutaha. He is there in the planet of Goloka and he is there in the living entity's heart also. That is the specialty of the Supreme Soul. So this verse clearly describes about Super Soul and not the individual soul. Like in one lecture, Prabhupada says, he has got his form, he has got his hands. Just like Krishna says, Asanami Prayatatmana. Now if you say Krishna is in Goloka Vrindavana, far, far from here, how he accepts? The answer is there. Sarvatah Pani Padam Tat. He has got hands. That is Vedic intention. Apani Pado Javana Grihitaha. The absolute Brahman has no hands and legs, but he can accept anything. He can walk everywhere. Just contradictory. Pashyati Achakshuhu. He has no eyes, but he can see everything. This is the difference. He has got his form. That is spiritual form and not this material limited form. But he has got his own form. One who does not understand his unlimited form Brahman form. Everywhere he can go, everywhere he can see, everywhere he can accept whatever you offer, everywhere he can walk. That is his form, but he is not formless. So this is one perspective what is explained in the life of Madhvacharya. One of the acharyas in the Madhva Parampara, once one of the acharyas had wanted to test all his disciples. So he had given them a fruit and asked them to eat in a secluded place where nobody else is watching. So different disciples went into different directions. Somebody went into a forest, somebody went into a cave, somebody went into a room, covered himself with all the doors, windows closed. Somebody went into the bed and closed himself with a, a blanket and started eating. Somebody went into the water and started eating inside the water, under the water. Like that, everywhere they were able to eat, but one disciple, he came back without eating. So the other disciples, they were all very happy that they could execute the test put by their spiritual master, and they were successful in the test, they were thinking. But this devotee came back very late, and the other devotees were also concerned. What happened? Why he is so late? Why he could not even eat one fruit in a single isolated place? They were thinking. So when he came back, he was still holding the food, and he was requesting forgiveness from the spiritual master, saying, "My dear sir, I could not execute even this simple order. Everywhere I could not find a place where I was isolated." Then the other friends, they were saying, why you could not? You could have come with us. We could have taken to an isolated place. We had many things like under in the forest, under a tree, under the bushes, into the caves. There are many such places. We could not find one such place also. The other devotee said, yes, everywhere I went. I went to a forest. I went to a cave. Everywhere I went. But I always saw there were two eyes that were always following me. So the devotees asked, who are the two eyes? Who is that following you? This devotee explains that Paramatma is always following me. I see that he is seeing me through my eyes. So I could not avoid being followed by Paramatma. So I could see that he is always watching me everywhere where I go. So I could not execute the task. And the spiritual master becomes very happy, and he says, you are that realized personality. You have understood the perspective. So similarly, because the Paramatma is there everywhere, then they say how Paramatma visualizes. There are many things which are taken as like day, night, light, trees, there are air. These are all are considered as witnesses, it seems. When we are standing in front of the Yamaraja or anywhere, that they will be the references as witness for all our single activities. So next verse, all of you can recite after me. Sarvendriya Gunabhasam.
Sarvendriya Gunabhasam.
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam.
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam.
Asaktam Sarva Brukshaiva.
Asaktam Sarva Brukshaiva.
Nirgunam Gunabhoktrusha.
Nirgunam Gunabhoktrusha.
Sarvendriya Gunabhasam.
Sarvendriya Gunabhasam.
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam.
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam.
Asaktam Sarva Brukshaiva.
Asaktam Sarva Brukshaiva.
Nirgunam Gunabhoktrusha.
Nirgunam Gunabhoktrusha.
So Krishna is saying the super soul is the original source of all senses, Sarvendriya Gunabhasam, but yet he is without senses. Sarvendriya Vivarshitam, he is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. Asaktam Sarva Brukshaiva, Nirgunam Gunabhoktrusha. He is Nirgunam, he transcends the modes of material nature. And at the meantime, it is the same, and at the same time, he is the master of all modes of material nature. Gunabhoktrusha. He is Nirgunam and he is Gunabhoktrusha in that way. So here it is mentioned the Supreme Lord as the source of all senses of living entities, Sarvendriya Guna Abhasam. So he doesn't have material senses like ours. His senses are transcendental. That's why they are called as Nirguna. So quoting from again Shvetashvarta Upanishad, Apani Pado Javano Grihitaha. The Supreme Lord had no hands which are materially contaminated, but he has his hands and accepts whatever sacrifice is offered to him. He had no material eyes, but he has eyes to see everything past, present, and future. He has no legs like us, but he can travel throughout this space because he has spiritual legs. The conclusion is, Lord has spiritual senses and he is not impersonal. Then if the Lord is impersonal, how can the parts and parcels which emanated from the Lord possess all these things? So how does the Lord appear in this material world is explained in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, shloka number 6, where he says, Sambhavami Atmamaya Ajopshana Atma. So Vedic literature confirms his whole embodiment is spiritual. He is the proprietor of all wealth and owner of all energy, most intelligent and full of knowledge, maintainer of all living entities and witness of all activities. So then how can we see him? Due to materially contaminated senses, we cannot see him. But whenever we are elevated to transcendental situation, then we can see. So impersonalists being materially affected cannot understand the Lord. Like in one lecture, Prabhupada says, somebody is taking that God is without any form because here it is said, Sarvendriya Vivarshita. Vivarshita means he has no indriyas. If God has no indriya, then he is Nirakara. But in the previous verse, Krishna has said, yes, I have got my indriyas, I can see everything, I can hear everything. So unless he has got ears and eyes to see, we cannot conceive anything that a man without any eyes can see. Is there any such idea? He has eyes, he has ears, he has hands, everything he has got. But because Sarvendriya Guna Abhasam is the origin. In the Vedanta Sutra, it is said absolute truth is the origin of everything. Janmadhyasya. So without a thing being existing in the absolute truth, how can it be manifested in his material truth? So there is everything, but only one has to understand what is that everything. That everything is spiritual and this is material. When it is said Sarvendriya Vivarjitam, he means he has no material senses. He has got senses, he has got everything, but they are not material. They are all spiritual in nature. That's the perspective here. So generally, people act in the consciousness. Once George Washington was asked, "What is the secret of your success?" So he said, "I pray as if everything depends upon God." Then he paused and continued, "I work as if everything depends upon me." So because it is said, Shastras also say, God helps those help themselves. So we have to act our duty first, then depend upon the Supreme Lord. That's the perspective. So with that consciousness, if we behave, then we'll become successful in our spiritual life. We have to do our duty, but without attachment. And we should completely depend upon the Lord for the outcome. Whether it is good or bad, it is up to the Lord because we keep doing our duties. Next, all of you can recite. Bahirantasya bhutanam.
Bahirantasya bhutanam.
Acharam charamevacha. Sukshmatva tadavijneyam.
Sukshmatva tadavijneyam.
Hare Krishna.
Sorry, there is a power failure, that's why everything went off. All of you can hear me?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
So, Bahirantasya Bhutanam, the Lord Supreme Truth exists both internally, Bahihi Antaha. Then, where is he? Acharam Charamevacha, in the both moving and non-moving. So, Sukshmatva Tadavijnayam. He is beyond the power of material senses. Sukshmatva, to see, Tadavijnayam, or to know. Durastam Cha Antiketad. Although he is Dura, far, far away, but he is Cha Antike. He is also very near to that also. So, The Supreme Lord is present both inside and outside of every jiva. So quoting from Maha Narayana Upanishad, Antarbahishcha Satsarvam Vyapya Narayana Stitiha. So Lord is there as inside in the Paramatma. In the outside world also, he is there as a Supreme Lord in the Vaikuntha. So how can we understand or see him? So there is quoting again from Kata Upanishad, Asino Duram Vrajati Sayano Yeti Sarvataha. So we cannot understand with these material senses, but one who has purified his mind and senses by practicing Krishna consciousness in bhakti can constantly see him. So next verse, all of you can recite. Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu.
Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu.
Vibhaktam ivacha stitam.
Vibhaktam
Bhuta bhaktarta tagnyayam. Grashishnu prabha vishnu cha. Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu. Vibhaktam ivacha stitam. Bhuta bhaktarta tagnyayam. Grashishnu prabha vishnu cha. So although as the super soul appears to be divided, avibhaktam, vibhaktam means he is divided, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Avibhaktam ta bhuteshu vibhaktam ivacha stitam. Then he is bhuta bhartarta tagnyayam. Krashishno prabhavishnucha. Bhuta bhartar, he is the maintainer of all living entity. It is to be understood that he devours and develops all. Krashishno prabhavishnucha. He devours and he develops all. Prabhavishnucha. Some people may ask, is the super soul divided? So everyone feels sun above his head, even though he is one. So similarly, Vedic literature said there is one Vishnu who is present everywhere by his omnipotence, just as the sun appears in many places to many persons. So the Lord as the all-devouring, it is mentioned in 11.32, Kalosmi Lokakshaitruth, as time I am, I destroy everything. So when there is creation, he develops all from their original state, and at the time of annihilation, he develops them. That's why it is called as Grashishnu Prabhavishnucha. So this is story of a king who was once ruling a kingdom. So one day there was a visitor who had offered the king a beautiful fan made of ivory. So he said, my dear sir, please accept this humble gift from me. So when it was handed over to the king fanned himself with that new present. Then he became very weary of it and he threw it to the jester in the court who was kneeling at his feet. He said, keep this with you until you find someone who is a greater fool than you. Then all the other courtiers, they started laughing at him for the absolute insult, or that is obvious insult made to the jester. So as the years passed away, the king fell ill. His condition deteriorated day by day. And he was on his bed. He was very weak and dispirited. The jester came to see his master. He said, how are you, sir? He whispered. The king replied, very bad. Soon I shall have to leave on my long journey. The jester asked, what journey, sir? In surprise. You are ill and weak and in no condition to move. Where will you go? The king claimed, oh fool, it is a journey which is inevitable. It is journey to the other world where the Yamadutas will come and take me. Then the jester inquired from the king, have you made any preparations for the journey, sir? The king replied, oh no, that is my great regret. His eyes filled with tears. So the jester quietly took out the fan which was given to him long ago. And he said, my dear sir, take this. You are a greater fool than me. You knew that you are going to undertake this inevitable journey and yet you made no preparations for it. So that's why you are supposed to suffer for the consequences. So today's last verse, all of you can recite after me. Jyotisham api tad jyotish.
Jyotishamaphi tajyotish.
Tamasaha paramuchyate.
Tamasaha paramuchyate.
Jnanam jneyam jnanagamyam.
Jnanam
Jnanam
jnanagaryam.
Hrudi sarvasya vishtitam.
Hridi sarvasya vishtitam.
Jyotishamapi tajyotish.
Jyotishamaphi tajyotish.
Tamasaha paramuchyate.
Tamasaha paramuchyate.
Jnanam jneyam jnanagamyam.
Jnanam jnanagaryam.
Hrudi sarvasya vishtitam.
Hridi sarvasya vishtitam.
So he is the source of light in all luminous objects. Jyotisham apitat jyotis. And he is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. Tamasaha paramuchyate. He is tamasaha and he is param. Jnanam jneyam jnanagamyam. He is the knowledge, he is the object of knowledge, and he is the goal of knowledge. Jnanam jneyam jnanagamyam. Hridi sarvasya vishtitam. He is situated in everyone's heart. So here the super soul is the source of light in all luminous objects like sun, moon, stars. Quoting from Kata Upanishad, Natatra Suryo Bhati. So all these things cannot show their light unless it is given reference from super soul. So why do we require assistance from sun or moon in this material world? Because this is tamasaha. This material world is full of darkness. Therefore, we require artificial light for us. So the Vedic literature confirms that Brahman is concentrated transcendental knowledge. So to one who is anxious to be transferred to the spiritual world, knowledge is given by the Lord. So where quoting from Shvetashvara Upanishad, the Lord is the ultimate goal of knowledge. And one must surrender to the Lord for liberation. Both these verses are quoted there. So the Lord is situated in the spiritual world, which is far, far away in the spiritual sky and not in this material world. Again, quoting Aditya Varanam Tamasa Parastat. So what is the distinction between the two knowers? One is one's hands and legs are distributed locally, but Krishna's hands and legs are distributed everywhere. The super soul is the master of all living entities and he is the ultimate center of all living entities. In one lecture, Prabhupada says. So Jyotishama with a Jyotish Tamasaha Param. So this Jyoti illumination is beyond this material world. And because there is illumination, that illumination is reflected in the material world. You will find the reflection, bluish reflection in the sky. It means Brahma Jyoti is bluish because it is coming from the body of Krishna. Therefore, it is bluish. We see the sky bluish and in darkness we see, although it is darkness, there is some brightness in the sky. So always the sky is covered, 7 times covered by different types of material element. That Brahma Jyoti is penetrating to the covers and light, little reflection we can see in the sky. So till now, what has been explained in these verses? The super soul as the object of knowledge, Jnayam. All pervading, his hands and legs everywhere are all pervading. He is the original source of senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living entities. He is transcendental to the modes, but he is the master of the material modes. He is all reconciling, he is inside and outside, Antarbahishya Bhutanam. He is subtle and beyond the perception of material senses. Sukshatma tad avijnayam. So avibhaktam, vibhaktam, undivided, although appears divided among all beings. He is the maintainer of all. Prashishnu, Prabhavishnucha, divorce and develops all. He is the source of all knowledge and enlightenment, and he is situated in one's heart. So all these qualities reflect to characteristics of Paramatma, what we have just understood in these verses from 14 till 18.
Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare
atmosphere. There were lakes, there were sages who had settled there, nice forests there. There was one devotee who had worshipped Lord Shiva there, and he established Lord Shiva to pray in there, to stay in there as eternally. So he is known as Talkachor Mahadev. So from whose name it becomes Dafor. So later this devotee was staying in that area. So every day he used to worship Tulsi. From the Tulsi leaves he used to accumulate. And every 6 months he used to go from there to Dwarka to worship the Lord. And to his full satisfaction, he and his wife will worship the Lord, and they used to come back after some days. So every 6 months this was his routine. So when he became old, up to 72 years, he was able to physically carry out the walk from their place to Dwarka. As he was becoming older, the Lord was concerned about this person's health. So when he was about to travel next time, Lord says, I am very much satisfied with your worship and with your prayers. So next time when you are coming, you come with a bullock cart. Then I will come with you and you can worship me at your place to your heart's content. So next time he comes with a bullock cart and he was stationed at bullock cart, then the local people will ask him, every time you are coming by walk, how come you came by bullock cart? Then he frankly says that Lord had appeared him in a dream and asked him to bring the bullock cart, so that Lord wanted to come with him to be worshipped in Darshan. So people do not give any attention to him and they think that it is a simple joke. But that night, so and they hastily had closed the entire temple, the sanctum and the altar and all. But who can obstruct the Lord if he wanted to go? Lord will open all the doors and the Lord will come and sit him on the bullock cart. And after traveling for some time, Lord asks Modana to take sleep, and Lord will physically drive the bullock cart to reach the border of Darshan. So when the early morning next day when they opened, the Lord was not there. So then all these Brahmanas, they start following Bodhana so that they want to capture him and bring back their deity. So when the deity, when it reaches, he wakes up Bodhana and informs him, please take care, you do one thing, you hide me in a pond. There was one Gomati pond and you hide me there. Achyutam Keshavam Ramanarayanam Krishna Damodaram Vasudevam Harim Sridharam Madhavam Gopika Vallabham. Hidden inside the pond, the people will come and the Brahmanas will come and contact the deity to be given back. So he goes to pacify them with a pot of curds, but they become even more angry. They try to attack him and one of the person will throw one sword at him. Bodhana dies there immediately. So after some time, their truce was formed. Then Lord will inspire the widow wife of Bodhana to give the weight of the deity in gold, so that the Brahmanas will become satisfied and they go back. And he also will instruct the Brahmanas that you go back after 6 months. There will be one specific well where the Lord, they will be able to find him out. One more replica deity, they will be able to find him in that desert, in that well, and they can continue their worship. Brahmanas were also very greedy and they put him onto a weighing stone. But by the mercy of the Lord, the weight of the deity, because she is an old lady and she has only one nose ring of a capacity of a gold, so Lord becomes so light that he will equivalently weigh to that nose ring. So And they taking that blessing, they go back. And before 6 months only, they go and they retrieve the deity. So this deity almost looks like Dakorji, but he is smaller in size. He is not to the full capacity that is being worshipped in Dwarka. So in that way, the deity is established there in Dakorji. Later, Ranchorji is named, and he is worshipped there gorgeously like a king, the king of Dwarka. And opulent worship goes on as other kings have taken care of the deity establishment of that. So this is the perspective. The Lord is ready for the devotees' purpose. He is ready to serve. He is ready to protect them. He is ready to give them an opportunity to service. So are we ready to accept the service of the Lord? That is the prime perspective. Because the devotee is dear to the Lord, God is very dear to the devotees, and the devotee becomes very dear to you. That is the principle that is being explained here. From almost like Krishna's time, he was a great devotee. So one day, he forgot about worshipping the Lord, and he was sitting in the house and everybody went to worship the Lord and Govardhan Puja. And then later when he realizes his mistake, he goes and prays to Krishna and please forgive me that he could not come forward to worship him on the specific day. So Krishna becomes very happy and he says he will give him an opportunity to worship him more in Kali Yuga. So he will take birth, and he and his wife will continue to be his devotee.
So, this is the perspective this week. We have understood about the qualities, 20 items of knowledge, and one more quality about the object of knowledge. Next week, we'll continue again with the further verses. Thank you.